Nights never came to dawn. They went on and on when you pulled me out.
Hello. How we doing? Meandering in. So for those up the back there that are walking out, could you close the door behind you? Thank you. See that? Crowdsourcing. You see that? That's brilliant. Cool. So cybersecurity is heavily dependent on individual knowledge and experience. It's not me presenting, by the way. I'm about to call up Nick. Actually, I might just take over, mate. One of the biggest challenges we face in defending against attacks is scaling analyst expertise and sharing tribal knowledge. This next talk explores how SOAR works as a data platform for security incidents, how we can use machine learning to connect people, and how analysts derive meaning and insights. So we have the fabulous, awesome Nick Pratley about to come up on stage. So Nick is a cybersecurity professional at BDO Risk Advisory Practice, specializing in cyber defense and security operations. Nick works with clients across Australia in the private and public sectors. He helps them understand and manage cybersecurity risk and delivers solutions to achieve better security outcomes. BDO is a global, can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, sorry, I just got the feedback a little bit there. So BDO is a global firm with over 2,500 cybersecurity and technology professionals in 35 countries. We advise clients on cybersecurity strategy, risk management and operations, as well as providing managed detection and response services. So could we please give a nice, warm AusCERT Gold Coast, very warm welcome to Nick Pratley.
Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction and thanks everyone for coming. My name's Nick Pratley and I'm going to be talking about some of the challenges that we face in cybersecurity operations and how SOAR can help as a platform for doing data analysis to help our analysts derive insights and meaning out of security incidents. This is a topic that I'm pretty excited about, so I'm happy to be here talking to you about it today. And I hope everyone gets something out of this. So whether you are involved in cybersecurity operations in some way, whether you are an analyst or working in an operational role, or perhaps you are managing a cybersecurity team, and especially if you are studying cybersecurity or wanting to move into a career within cybersecurity, I'm hoping that you get something out of this in terms of seeing SOAR as a technology that helps us enable people and process. There are large numbers of people entering this industry at the moment, which is fantastic. We need more people. What I want to show and talk about today is about how we can help them become more effective more quickly by using technology to support what they're doing day to day. People are at the core of cyber defense, and scaling analyst knowledge and expertise is one of the key challenges that we face. So let's take a look at some of the challenges that we have within security operations. If you're a manager, you are dealing with staffing challenges, so hiring, retaining, and training your analysts. And staff are often frustrated by the day-to-day of dealing with security alerts, repetitive alerts, and false positives, so spending time chasing down things that turn out not to be real security events. As a manager, it's up to you to help alleviate this challenge for your team. As an analyst, you're struggling to prioritize amongst the flood of alerts. So what you're seeing, what does it mean? Which one do you look at first? You have many of these that turn out to be false positives. So you spend a lot of time on things that were really not what you should be looking at. And you have limited visibility of the environments that you're monitoring. So you have imperfect information. You've got to piece together a lot of things based on what you see at hand. On top of this, you have to constantly work to share knowledge and collaborate with your colleagues and make sure that we are always working together to standardize the processes that we have in place to help us deal with security incidents and events. Anyone who has been involved in cybersecurity for any amount of time understands that false positives are still a massive challenge for us. False positives are always going to exist. This is not something that's going to go away. And part of the reason for this is that detection technologies are optimized to avoid false negatives. So if there's an attack that occurs on an endpoint, the endpoint detection and response agent wants to trigger that, wants to flag on it, and wants to let you know that something has happened. They need to avoid having a security incident that was missed, so they're always going to optimize to triggering an alert. This is part of why we have so many false positives to deal with. The reason why this is a problem, though, is not that false positives occur. It's that analysts spend so much time looking at these and so much time investigating them. And the irony is that because of that, a real attack might actually go missed because they're not spending the time looking at things that are probably more worthwhile investigating. So it's not that false positives in themselves are a problem, it's that they take away time from looking at real things. If we have a look at some of the stats on this, it's pretty horrifying. For most SOCs, around half of the alerts that they look at in a day are going to turn out to be false positives. And a quarter of the time that they spend looking at things are going to be false positives. Most SOCs can only investigate 45%, so not even half of all the alerts that they actually see. And only half of SOCs rate themselves as actually being effective at prioritizing alerts that they should be looking at. I've worked with one SOC several years ago that had a team of analysts that were looking at over 10,000 alerts every single week. At the end of each week, they would tend to just clear the queue and start again fresh. So those false positives, the false positive rate for that was astronomical, and you have to wonder about how many real events were actually missed as a result. So why is training security analysts so difficult? And why is security analysis as a field such a challenge? And how does SOAR help alleviate this as well? Because this is all about SOAR. So I'll get to the SOAR part in a moment. But the main reason that analyst training is so complex is that security analysis is more of an art than a science. And it relies on having people with experience, people who've seen something before, to know what something means. So as a new analyst, you don't have that experience, and we need to work to make that easier. Cybersecurity is not unique in that regard. There are actually quite a lot of fields that are also heavily dependent on people and process to operate. And some of these other fields are starting more and more to use data and automated analysis to help them overcome that. I'll give an example from the mining industry. I was at a dinner recently talking to a senior geologist at a large global mining firm who was working with a team of people to help use data and automation to solve some of the problems they have in the mining industry. And this didn't make a lot of sense to me at first because I don't know a whole lot about mining. But what he explained was that in geology, you have geologists all around the world sitting looking at core samples, which are drilled from mine sites, and they analyze what's in the sample and say what they see. So there are various properties of soil samples that they record down, and they spend their time just explaining what's in the samples. They don't really spend a lot of time explaining what this means. And every now and then, though, there'll be a geologist who's been doing this for 30 years who will see something and recognize it and say, I've seen this before. I saw this at a mine in South America 10 years ago, and now I know what this means. And it's that meaning that businesses want to get out of that. They want to understand for a mine site, how's this going to turn out? Is this going to be a good mine for us or bad? It comes down to things like that. We have a similar problem within security in that it relies on human expertise, humans who've seen this before to know what they're looking at and know what it means. Security analysts spend a lot of time looking at and describing what things are without explaining what they actually mean. And so we can definitely learn from other fields in how we come to address and overcome that. And so the way that they're solving this within mining, I think I skipped over something here, is they're taking the manual records that that geologists are creating, and they're plugging those into massive databases. And they are extracting those features and using machines to automate that process of deriving meaning. Because a machine can look at far more samples than a human ever can, and it can pick out correlations for things that we wouldn't even think to look for. So again, this is what we can do within cybersecurity. I want to show how SOAR is a platform to enable this type of automated analysis. And the only difference here is that we are dealing with security incidents as our primary data model, as opposed to core samples. So let's take a look at what SOAR is. There's been a lot of focus in this conference and talk about SOAR in general that is about automation as a way to string together tasks in a playbook to automate a response to something. And that is really useful and does save time. What I want to think about, though, is a different kind of automation, which is about using SOAR as a repository of data about security incidents and to help bring things together. So let's go through the major components of SOAR. There is typically a case or incident management component. This is where we record all our incidents. This is what Analyst uses as a console for dealing with security events. There's automation and orchestration components, so workflows, playbooks, task automation. That fits within the automation component. And this is integration with other systems as well. There's a collaboration function in most cases. This is about security analysts working together, recording notes, talking to each other, and in some cases talking with external teams as well to work through a response to an incident. And then there's a metrics and reporting component because, again, we've got a platform here that has a large amount of data on security incidents, and we can pull reports and metrics straight out of that. The SOAR platform that I personally am most familiar with is Palo Alto's Cortex XSOAR. I don't work for Palo, I'm not selling it, but this is the one that I've used the most. So we have worked with XSOAR on a number of customer deployments, and it's also what we use within our BDO Global SOC. Having said that, most SOAR platforms have the same sets of functionality, so all of what I'm talking about today is pretty much analogous to any other SOAR platform. When you deploy SOAR, it becomes a central platform for dealing with security incidents. You've got your data coming into the SIEM, which is where your detections trigger from. So log data, event data comes into the SIEM, detections trigger there, and then the SIEM sends alerts to SOAR, which becomes the console. This is what security analysts are looking at. And it's that incident data that's in that data model that I want to talk about here. This is just showing a bit of a breakdown of what's in an incident. So these things apply to pretty much every security incident that's in a SOAR platform. You've got a set of categories and classifications. SOCs deal with different types of security incidents, not too much of a surprise. But it is really important to categorize each one so that you know how to bucket things. The first thing you want to do when you're dealing with an incident is figure out what type of thing this is so I know how to analyze and respond appropriately. You have custom fields. Now, a lot of case and incident management tools have custom fields. Typically, they're not used very commonly, and this is, I think, a key component of any SOAR deployment is making use of custom fields that contain types of data that are uniquely relevant to each different type of incident. This is going to be really important for when we talk about how to get machines to automatically correlate things. You've got to break things out into custom fields. We have custom statuses to define workflow stages. This is really more just supporting the particular SOC and how they're using the platform in a way that makes sense for how they work through incidents. We have timers associated with each of the stage fields. So as I'm working through an incident, I should always have knowledge about how long each step has taken me, time to detect, time to contain, time to investigate, time to remediate. So I mentioned that a lot of incident management tools have a way to create custom fields. Think of SOAR as case management on steroids. It allows us to break out incidents into a really large set of unique data fields. This is like a taxonomy for dealing with security incidents. So to make SOAR work for this kind of automation, we want to break everything out into a way that describes our incidents very clearly and very explicitly. So think of a typical incident management tool that has things like a name, like a title of the incident, the analyst it's assigned to, when it occurred, some things like that. And then you just have free text notes describing the investigation steps. What we want to do here is work out which features of this particular incident are actually relevant to analysing it and solving it, and break those out. So think about the difference between an attempted account takeover attack, for example, and a malware-infected device. The things that I'm looking at as an analyst are going to be quite different for those two different types of incidents. So I want to make sure that I have the information presented to me. What an analyst is doing when they are investigating is they're answering questions about what this thing is. So they want to know who, what, when, where, how, and why. That's what the investigation is focused on. So if we define this into a set of questions that we need to ask by saying these are the fields that we need to have anytime we look at this particular type of incident, that we know exactly what questions we need to answer when we're investigating it. And what this gives us when we start breaking out our incidents in this way is a massive relational database of all of our security incidents. We have in here not just the log messages and the events that underlie the incident, but also information about the outcomes. So who did this get assigned to? How long did it take to resolve? What was the classification in the end? Was it what the alert said it was initially, or did it actually change throughout the investigation? What was the result? Was it a false positive? Was it a true positive? We've got not just the inputs, but the outputs in the incident data model as well. This is what sets up the ability to use machine learning to generate some insights out of this. Just to give a look at what this looks like in a real SOAR platform, here's an example of a custom layout in XSOAR. And so this is for a ransomware incident, and we can see we've got some basic details like when this occurred, but we've got some fields here that are very specific to a ransomware incident. So we've got the ransomware recovery tool, in this case not available. We have the ransomware encrypted file owner, the approximate number of encrypted endpoints, so that's a numeric field. We have the ransomware strain. We have the data encryption status, the cryptocurrency address, the ransomware onion address, and the ransomware email. So obviously, very specific to just ransomware incidents. But apply this to any other type of incident, we want to be able to pull these features out and attach it to the incident directly. Within XSOAR, indicators, so indicators of compromise are their own model in themselves. So we have indicators that relate to incidents. I'm just showing this so you can see that while we do have indicators attached to an incident, they're a separate data model there as well. So how do we get all our incident data together? This is where contextual enrichment playbooks come in, and this is a key component of SOAR. So as I said earlier, a security analyst is trying to answer questions about what's happened here. Get the machines going and talking to all the systems to fill that data in. What we've got now at this point is a data model saying, for this type of incident, I want to populate all of these fields to answer what's happened here. So I want to hit the go button on a playbook to have it go off and collect all that data. Often it's not contained within the initial event that triggered that incident, but I know where to go and get it usually. I have to figure this out manually somehow, so I'm going to run a bunch of commands as part of my investigation. And over time, you start to see, how did I answer that question? How did I fill in this field on this incident? How do I know what to look for? And as I said, we've got a set of incidents that also now have the outcomes associated with these. The outcomes as well don't have to be just static, so we're just a closed status. Was this a true positive? Was this a false positive? We can also capture things about the reason why it was a true positive or a false positive. It may be that we had some missing data. Maybe we had some context missing. Indeterminate is a really bad outcome for security incidents. We want to highlight those and avoid that. But if we start to capture some of the reasons for these, we can do some analysis on what type of events are we actually doing a bad job of analyzing and resolving. So it's really key. And again, SOAR enables this by not just being a standardized incident management tool, it's fully customizable and fully programmable. So as long as you know what you want to do out of it, you can typically do it. In the next few slides, I'm going to talk through a few use cases for machine learning within SOAR platforms. These can be applied once you have the incident data model configured and you've got some data in the system to work with. These ones are actually out-of-the-box use cases within SOAR, so I'm not showing anything too complicated, too advanced. As long as you have the data there to support the use cases, these will actually work by default. And again, other platforms have similar features as well. So based on the data sets that we've laid out, we've now enumerated different types of fields for different incidents, and we've got the outcomes in there. We can start to see where incidents are related to other incidents. And again, the key here is that it's not an analyst who remembers what they saw last week or knows what they saw a month ago and spent time working on. We now have a machine looking at large data sets of incident data with input parameters and with outcomes. The machine is doing a better job of matching related incidents than we ever could as analysts, and it'll find correlations that we weren't looking for. The reason this is so useful is this provides analysts with information up front about the event that they're looking at. Where have I seen this before? What is this related to? And then I can see, I have all that information at hand about where we've seen similar things in the past, and I'm getting this without having to have seen all those things myself. So this is again about scaling analyst expertise. I learn from what the machine is now telling me about this thing. Another key aspect of this is that if I can identify related things, I can work out whether something may be a duplicate. So if I'm looking at an event that's come in, one of the first filters that I want to use for whether I'm going to spend time investigating this is this already solved or is someone else looking at this? By showing how things are related, the tool should be able to tell me if that's something that I should know about already. I don't have to go and ask everyone on the team for every single thing that I'm looking at. By looking at the related incidents, we can connect analysts with experts who've dealt with these things before. This helps facilitate knowledge transfer and give us meaningful ways for people to talk to each other about the types of things they're doing, rather than just saying, hey, has anyone seen this lately? The machine will now know someone else has looked at this particular one, and it'll make some recommendations to say, you should speak to this person who typically closes these ones out. Maybe they are the most efficient at closing them out, so maybe you should assign it to them. Now, I don't want to suggest just assign it to them and make it their problem, but it gives me an opportunity to go and talk to them about, why do you typically have these ones? What do you know about this one that you can teach me so that I can then get better at doing this? Sometimes you're not assigning it to someone else. You just want to pull a collaborator in and again, learn from what they're doing. So you may have someone on the team who is an absolute gun at pulling apart exploit kits. I want to talk to them when I have something that looks like an exploit kit and get them to teach me, what do they normally do? What are the actions they take? And be able to come to them with something that is focused in their area of expertise. So this is the most efficient way to get through a large set of incidents that I may have to deal with at this time. So this is all about using technology to connect humans together so that they can collaborate and learn from each other. And following on directly from that is analyst guidance. So as I said, every action that you take within the platform is now attached as it's a command that ran on that incident. So even before we've gone down the path of setting up standardized playbooks for every single type of incident, I can already learn from what other analysts are doing, what they typically do. I can see their thought processes to see what queries they ran, what commands they ran, what did they do to help answer these questions. So even before I talk to them, I should probably have a look at some of the related incidents and see how they typically go through this. And I've got it all broken out. But the machine can also then provide recommendations to say, there's this thing that's just occurred. You see 5 of these a week. The first 3 things that other analysts do when they see this one are these commands. Give that a try. So it gives me a starting point. And as I said, this is a bit more flexible than trying to create everything as a standardized playbook and say a simple if this, then that, which is what playbooks are commonly set up. You might get to that for some things, but you want to also have some flexibility about how you get to understanding what I need to do. It's not the same in every single case. And an experienced analyst who's done this before will intuitively know when I need to vary from the script, but newer analysts don't have that expertise and they haven't learned that yet. So this helps them understand this is the normal path that I go through, but maybe you want to try some other things as well just to get some more of that context. For the last part of this talk, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about using attack simulation to generate a set of incidents. There was a great talk about this earlier today, which actually focused much more on the attack simulation side, and I wanted to show how that fits into the SOAR aspect of this. We use attack simulation with many of our customers who have a SOC to help them understand how effective and efficient their SOC is at detecting and responding to attacks. As a side effect of running these simulations, what we're actually doing is generating a set of known bad actions. These are confirmed malicious events. So think of this as a labeled training set. We know these things are bad because our red team did them. We don't have to guess at this. The general process for running simulations is shown on screen here. So we work with the customer to identify some threat scenarios that they should be testing in their environment. We map that into a sequence of a chain of events that incident will look like end to end. We turn that into a set of test cases for each stage of the attack, and we build scripts and automation to execute those attacks in their environment. We set up some infrastructure to run it on, and then we document the expected outcomes. So based on what we know about your detection technology in your environment and the information you have at hand, we have an idea on how they should perform in that scenario. And then, of course, we run the exercise. So simulations are a great way to build up those contextual enrichment playbooks. By having this repeatable exercise that you can run and knowing for every incident that's going to be triggered as a result of this, these are the questions that I have to answer because I've got my fields broken out. You can iterate through this and build up playbooks to help you go and populate that data model and say, for this type of incident, I need all these questions answered. I'm only going to be effective at dealing with this one if I have all that information available. So you're filling in data visibility gaps as you go through this, or at least it can be used to do that if you run it on a regular basis. So as well as providing some data through running it as a one-off, use this as a training platform for your analysts to go and build out those playbooks. Because again, it's confirmed malicious. You know that this thing was bad, you know how it should end up, so build your playbooks around those types of incidents. At the end of the day, you get a measurable result on how well the SOC performed, and that's nice in terms of seeing where you are and being able to show improvement in detection effectiveness over time. But as I said, the real key from a SOAR perspective here is building up that set of malicious events that help to inform the data models in the SOAR, and help to build up what the machine has available to analyze and to help bring analysts together and inform their processes. So if you're going to do all this work, you need to have some measures to show how this is helping over time. Think back to the challenges at the start around the challenge of dealing with false positives and how much time that takes up, and the challenge of scaling analyst expertise and helping people learn from each other. What we want to understand at the end of all of this is how, as we're addressing those challenges, how are we improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the SOC? And from an efficiency perspective, this is around seeing the time spent on investigating false positives drop. So by having a data set that allows a SOAR platform to tell analysts, go and talk to this person or run this set of commands, it's pretty logical to see that that should drop the time spent on investigating each one of those new things. We should be, over time, avoiding having an analyst who is new, who hasn't seen this thing before, having to relearn from the very beginning how to address that entire incident, just to find out every time that many of these are false positives. They still need to go through that process, but we can accelerate that learning process, and that's what the system is intended to do. And in terms of effectiveness, at the end of the day, we want to be able to show that we are getting better at doing what the business is paying us to do, which is to detect and respond to attacks. So the outcome, the proof of that is in the SOC simulation attack tests. The results of that is just getting better over time. And again, Just based on the fact that we are repeatedly building up our contextual enrichment playbooks every time we run these and iterating over that, we should be seeing improvements in this over time. The key points I wanted to get through in this presentation are that cybersecurity is heavily dependent on human expertise and having standardized processes. Technology is fantastic, but we are, at the end of the day, dependent on humans to know what they're looking at and to learn from each other and share that knowledge and get better at what they're doing. The promise of SOAR is that technology can assist us with these processes. And that technology exists today. So the use cases that I showed for using machine learning in a SOAR platform were out of the box. They exist today, and we can make use of that as long as we structure our data correctly. It does require a bit of a shift in thinking. We need to understand how we need to model data for the platform to be able to do this. So there is some work involved in creating that, in engineering that, so that we have the environment available for the tool to do its job. So if we just add new tools like SOAR, but we don't change the way that we actually use them, we're not really doing enough to address those challenges that we discussed up front, and we're still going to remain unable to scale analyst expertise and deal with knowledge transfer and sharing, collaboration and improvement. That brings me to the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Fantastic. That was really good. Thank you. Were there any questions? No questions on the app through the Q&A button. But I'm hoping there might be some questions on the floor. I can get my steps up, running around. Nope, doesn't look like it.
No, getting off easy.
All right, easy. So thanks again, Nick. It was really, really insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've got about 10 or so minutes, just over 10 minutes before the next speaker comes on, who's going to be Zooming to us. See what I did there? So don't go away, or if you do want to go away, please come back. Grab a refreshment. There's some water outside as well as some mints and stuff. So see you all back here shortly.